that is called Launch Your App or Website Project by Yourself with no-code tools. That's the first time we give this online conference in English, so we'll try to get it clear. And this conference is hosted by Station F, which is the biggest facility for startups in the world in Paris. And we thank them for welcoming us to explain to you what no-code tools are, what you can do with them, with very concrete examples, because no-code tools, as you will see, is really can be useful for any type of people or entrepreneurs or companies. So we'll begin by a very, very concrete example, even two examples. Indeed, there is an epidemic right now, and some associations, some organizations fight against that epidemic. For example, there is an organization called Banlieue Santé in France that gives meals to older people who are in underprivileged neighborhoods, and also who translates some healthcare videos into many languages and dialects for non-French speaking people. And we developed an application in no code in 3 days for them. So we'll show it to you and how it was built. And there is another application we've developed to help another organization. That's H24 Urgence. It means emergencies 24 hours on 24 hours. And they just list and map all the maisons de santé, healthcare houses that exist in France, because those services are not very well known, and they are very good alternative to emergency services or ambulances and that on. So we developed also an application for them. So does everybody see my window? So this is the Banlieue Santé application. If you go to enmodeconfiné.org, you will see this on your computer, or on your mobile phone, you will see an app. So here are the translated videos. If I go, for example, in the English version, it may be clearer, more clear. Up. If I want to see, for example, video of a healthcare video translated into Romanian, I can click here. If I want to go on another page to help Banlieue Santé because they are looking for people to help them, to give money, to give some food, to give some places where to cook, to deliver it to the older people. There are also other links, and there is a big internal part so that they can manage all their logistics. And when I click on it, of course, I need a password, and I can't show to you this part because that's confidential. But what I have to say is we use two no-code tools here to build the front-end part. We've used Glide, and I will show you how it looks like behind it, how we built it, and to manage all their workflows, their logistics. That's built with Airtable. For example, if they want to add a mission, they click on it, and missions are correlated to places where to deliver, to supplies. So that's a real app, so that they can coordinate very easily, because Airtable enables you to build powerful databases even if you're not a developer, a coder. So behind it, this is the interface of Glide. If I want to add, for example, here a button, I can add it like it, or some sound or some pictures. So I can build my interface on each page. But what is interesting in Glide also is how it is built. For example, this first page, and that's a very good example of how no-code works. Here, I made some specific blocks, for example, text, button, title. And here, that's a list, an inline list. How does it look like behind it? Here, there is the title, the subtitle, the image, and it corresponds to this part. Here, there are other pieces of text, and here you can see some lists. That's the list of pictures, the name, the English version name, the link to the picture of the flag for people who can't read or understand French, and the link to the YouTube video. And it gives this result. So that's a very powerful tool to build web applications, and you can even create profiles for people if you want them to subscribe, to get an account, a profile level. And behind it, so as I said, for more complex feature, internal feature, there is Airtable, but we'll talk about it later. And the second example, H24 Urgence, I will really quickly show it to give you another view. I mean this map. To build this map, where all the healthcare houses are listed, as I am sharing my screen, it's a bit slow, but normally it's very reactive. I'm in Paris. I click on this house, for example. I have a page where I see the address, where I can call. I can even favorite it, but I have to let my mail address. Here, there are some elements about how to ask, how to consult with them. If I get here favorites, I will see only my favorite maps. I took 3 hours. It took me 3 hours to build this app because behind it, I had a very clear listing made by Zahim, the woman who is building this project. And that's a very clear listing, a very simple table, a Google Sheet. You know, everybody knows how to build a Google Sheet, or it's very easy to learn. And then if you spend, I think, 1 day or 2 days on Glide, if you're a non-coder, you can already begin to do powerful things. So this is no code. This is what we are gonna talk about. And I have another point that if you have questions, normally you have the comments on one side, but on the other hand, you have an ask a question feature, an ask a question link button in Crowdcast. So if you want to ask questions, you can ask it during our talk, our workshop, and we will take them at the end of the workshop, because we will talk for 45 minutes and then have questions with you. So hello, we are Contournement. Contournement in French, it means bypass, to bypass. Why? Because we teach people how to bypass technical difficulties, technical complexity, technical barriers. How? By training people on no-code tools, by consulting also, making boot camps also, so that people can build their own project on several weeks, several hours a week. And we have also built a community and organized many events around no-code tools in France, so that people can learn how to build websites and mobile apps by themselves without coding. So our program in French, of course. So we welcome you. That's done. We will introduce you about the no-code movement, because that's not only tools, that's a real movement that is getting shape. We'll showcase some real examples of successful projects who began without any coder, who bootstrapped without any coder, and then needed coder later. And we will show you which bricks they used to build it, which stacks. Then a very great, very big, very large overview of no-code tools, but very, very quickly. You will have the presentation at the end, and there will be a replay, so you will be able to to read it more deeply if you want later. And there will be the question and answer. And of course, excuse my English, there will be many Frenchy phrases and way of putting it, but I hope I will be understandable. So, enchanté, nice to meet you. We will very quickly explain who we are. I am Erwan Kezar, and I co-founded several companies in my life. The most famous of them is Simplon.co. It's the biggest network of free as beer face-to-face trainings on web development in the world, for people, for everybody, but mainly for people who have no job, no diploma, people who are refugees, with a very strong goal of men-women equality. Later, when I decided to leave on 2017, 3 years ago, I founded Targo, which is also a social company on training on the web. And people say, but you were training people on code, and now on no code. That's not logic. But yes, it is, because when I had the idea of Simplon.co in 2012, that was because we identified some technologies that were more accessible, more reachable, easier to learn for non-coders, for non-tech people, for example, Ruby on Rails. And it was difficult, but we wanted to democratize, to commoditize this teaching for people who are non-engineers. And today, the technologies have moved forward, and we want to teach people how to build things, how to make things with no code. And we met with Alexis at Simplon some years ago.
Hi, I'm Alex, and I joined Simplon in 2015. So that's where I met Erwan. I have a technical background. I'm originally a programmer, and I've been the CDO of several startups before joining Simplon. I came to Simplon to start Simplon Prod, which is the web agency of Simplon, and where we would recruit some students to work on paid projects like website, mobile apps for various types of clients, some big corporations, NGOs, and non-profits mostly. And I left Simplon about a year ago, and I've decided that I wanted to empower people to build all those websites and tools by themselves using no-code tools. So that's why we're here with Erwan. So people don't have to pay agencies anymore, and they can kickstart their projects themselves.
So we too come from training and also from code, from web development in code. And we know the value of code. And first disclaimer, we'll never say, there is no code, so you don't need any coder anymore. Of course you need them. As you'll see, we recommend no code to build new projects, new products, to test, to kickstart, but then you'll need a coder. And as we say, if you have to break a small piece of wood, you won't take a chainsaw. You will just break it with your hands. That's how we see it. And also, no code is a very good way of entering into programming, to learn code later. So why no code and the way of contournement, the way to do things, how we do it? There is 0.3% of people in the world who can code. And what would happen if the 90.7% had the opportunity to build things? Because in our times, many projects need a digital side, need a website, need a web app. Many people have ideas or need some tools to get stronger in their projects, but there is this technical barrier. No-code tools enable you to build things on the web and digital stuff. And it exists. It has existed for years. For my part, I built my first website with Squarespace 10 years ago. I tested Bubble, which is a tool that enables you to build web apps, complex web apps and mobile apps without coding. I tested and I discovered Bubble 5 years ago. But all those tools were just emerging. They were not very mature. That was not really stable. It was rich, but you were limited. And 2 years ago, in 2018, with Alex, we really saw some real strong signals of the maturity of no coding. First, no-code tools got really stable, reliable, rich, and user-friendly. When we tested them again, we said, oh, they really changed. Webflow, Bubble. Two, some startups bootstrapped without developers and succeeded. We will give some examples, but here we see Impuesto Correcto on the lowest side of the slide. That was at Y Combinator, a very famous accelerator, but there are many others. Third, some no-code tools raised millions of dollars, as you can see here with Bubble or Webflow. So they recruited, they got stronger, they got many users, and ecosystems popped up, began to pop up. No-code agencies, online trading, etc. For example, AirDev, you can see on the lowest right side. Then we said to ourselves, let's go on no-code, now it's ready. And we began to see more and more tweets like this one, which shows very clearly how no-code can change your way of seeing projects. Andrew Wilkinson is a serial entrepreneur. For example, he co-founded Dribble, so he knows the web, he knows startups, and he tweeted, earlier this year, I had a productivity breakthrough. I used to spend between $25K and $100K building an app over 3 to 6 months. It was frustrating, it was expensive, and it was slow. Then I started using no-code tools like Webflow, Bubble, Zapier, and Airtable. And we want you to get this productivity breakthrough today. Here is a picture of the first no-code conference that took place in San Francisco on last November. We were there. We were the only French people. Yes, there was one who worked at Typeform, but he was not a real visitor. But there were people from all around the world. It was organized by Webflow, and you see here the co-founder of Webflow, Vlad Magdalin, introducing the conf. And he said, "We're all pioneers. Remove the code barrier, empower 100 times more makers." So that's really the idea. When you remove that barrier, people can do themselves of what they want to do. They can make it on their own. And what it means that 100 more projects, 100 times more projects can have a chance to succeed. So behind it, we will need more coders to build this project and to continue on these projects. But also you need coders to build no-code tools. So more no-code, more developers needed. And also this code barrier, that's why we are here. That's to bypass this barrier, because you can learn no-code tools on your own, but that's not easy. You have to enter into it. That's easier than coding, but you have to be helped to do it efficiently. Very important point. Sometimes we'll talk about websites, mobile applications. To be very clear, when we talk about a website, it's about a website, a simple website, like a corporate website to get information without features. And that's a website you see on your computer. A mobile site is a responsive site. You know, that's a simple site, but which is optimized to be seen on a mobile. You know, with your fingers and don't need to zoom and de-zoom. When you talk about web applications, we talk about complex applications. For example, Airbnb, Facebook, Amazon, you know, all those applications that can be tools. We have many interactions and so on. And when we talk about mobile applications, we talk about applications built specifically for mobile. For example, I don't know, Instagram, Uber. They are complex applications, and you mainly use them on mobile because you use the GPS or the camera. And you can build all those types of tools, apps with no-code tools. So let's begin a showcase with concrete examples, true stories, and the no-code bricks they used. Comet is a very good example. They are a French startup that's a platform that puts into relation some big companies and some high-quality freelancers in web dev and data. What is interesting is that they are 3 co-founders, and none of them are coders. None of them knew how to program with code. And one of them discovered Bubble and built their first version with Bubble without coding. And at the beginning, they didn't even automate what they did. They did it by hand, looking for clients, looking for freelancers. They did it on the web themselves to feel, to know their product, to know how to sell it. And that's the very good way of bootstrapping, of beginning a startup. So they did it by hand. Then they saw some things they could automate, they could optimize. So they built a platform with Bubble and Google Sheets and Zapier. We will talk about Zapier later. And then they raised some 2 million euros. And then they recruited a CTO to code because there were some limits in the features. They could no code, so they began to code. They began to migrate to put everything from no code to code, but there were no interruption. The service was just running, and clients were happy. And then they got another fundraising, and now they are very numerous employees in the company. And what is funny is that their co-founder, Charles Thomas, we interviewed him in our podcast. You can go on search engine and type Contournement podcast, you will find it. That's in French. And he says that he trains all of his employees on no code so that they are more productive and efficient. So that's a very good advocate of no coding. So Dualito, I let Alex explain to you.
Okay, so here's another example that we really like. So it's called Dualito. It comes from the fact that, in the US, big country, they have big backyards, and many of those backyards, people have small houses or sheds, where you can live in. So there's this guy called Caleb Barkley that wondered if there would be an opportunity for a marketplace for those type of houses, which didn't exist yet. So basically, he made two assumptions. People are interested in selling their backyard houses at some point, and people are willing to buy second-hand houses. This is nothing for sure. I mean, maybe people would be disgusted to live in a house or a second-hand house or something like that. So those are assumptions. So he had to verify them. So obviously, he used no-code tools to do that. So he easily verified the first assumption by scouting the web and sites like Craigslist, where he found a lot of listings for these kind of houses. So he gathered them all in a Google Sheet because he knew that would help him kickstart his project. Then he went on to verify the second assumption. And for that, he needed to build a website that would display all the houses available in a nice way. And for that, he used Webflow. I should note, actually, that he's not a programmer. He doesn't have a technical background, but he's a designer. So he helps making something nice. So he quickly built a website. You can see a screenshot of the first version. If you go now on Dualito, it's actually a lot nicer. It's already pretty nice in that first version. He built it very quickly. He says that it took him about a day to get 90% of it done. And then once he made a website, he injected all the houses he had collected thanks to his on his Google Sheet. And there's a functionality in Webflow that just could import everything straight away. So that was very quickly. So, he was, in about a day, he was up and running, literally. It took him more time to collect the ads, but it was up and running very quickly. Then it just needed two more bricks, is to collect the leads on the houses, meaning the people who were interested to buy the houses, to see if there were actually people willing. Maybe there wouldn't be. And so for that, he used Airtable and Zapier. So basically, he made a form with Airtable that would store and collect the data of the leads. And then he would store them in Airtable. And then with Zapier, he would use the automation tool. Zapier is an automation tool to automatically put in contact using emails the owners of the houses and the people that were interested to buy them. All this was automated. He almost didn't do anything by hand. At the beginning, obviously, he did some things by hand. But the thing quickly grew. And it took him about 60 hours to build all this. But then in the first months, it generated almost 4,000 leads. And he made it also, it was product number one on a product hunt for a day. So it generated a lot of interest. So I think we can say that it definitely verified that without coding and spending a dime, he didn't spend anything, well, except maybe for the hosting of Webflow, but he verified that there was an opportunity for his idea. So that's it for Duelito. Can you? Yeah, thanks. Another example that comes from Station F, actually. So this is L'Intendance, French company based in Station F. It's a very interesting project. It's really cool. It was started by Myriam and Noélie, and it offers, it's a website to sell organics bulk products. So no plastic, and all the delivery is done with bikes or electric motorcycles. So there is no CO2 emissions. So I highly recommend that you use it. You should really have a look. And the website is really beautiful. So let's have a look at how they build it. So they knew they wanted to do something very attractive. It's important if you do e-commerce, people are very willing to come and buy your products. So they went to designers, and those designers advised them to use Webflow. So the designers built the website, actually. But the advantage of having Webflow is that Myriam and Noélie can very easily and quickly update parts of the website. If they want maybe to add a banner on the front page or something like that, they can do it themselves. They don't have to go through the designers again. And Webflow has a built-in e-commerce feature, so also that part was taken care of and was efficient, so they could start very quickly to sell. There was only one problem, is that Webflow handles the taxes, like the VAT, in the American way. That means the tax depends on the states where you are. But in France, it doesn't work like that. So they used Airtable to combine with Zapier to process the taxes like we do in France, depending on the product. And then the system, this no-code system, generates the invoice for the customer. And then last part, they also have obviously logistics. So for this, they couldn't find a no-code way to do it. So they used a little bit of code, of Python. And the idea was to generate a detailed order with images, like PDF for images, to make it very easy for the people preparing the packages in the warehouse to know what they had to go through to take on the shelves. So they use some code. So as you can see, well, in this modular approach, we'll talk about it more later, well, you can definitely have a brick of code, for instance. We never said that no-code tools mean not combining those no-code tools with code. So always use the best option, the best and most efficient option, whether it's no code or code. That's important to have in mind.
Of course, at Contournement, when some clients, some entrepreneurs need some code and no code can't do the stuff with the job, we say it, of course.
All right. And then this last example, we really like. It's typical side project, and we love side projects at Contournement. So what is it? Well, basically, it's an app. It's a mobile app that you download on the store that shows you today's weather in comparison to yesterday's weather. So it's a very good way to realize what the weather is feeling like. It was built using Thinkable, which is a very powerful no-code tool to build native apps. And you can use it to connect to APIs. That's one of the really interesting features. So for instance, in this case, they use Dark Sky API that gives you the weather of a location that you send them. And obviously, the app detects the location alone using the GPS. And all this with Thinkable. And Thinkable can also be used to deploy those apps on the stores. So this app is actually sold $2.99. The story doesn't say how many is sold or how many is selling because it's still but given the fact that it took him only a day to build it, I think it's really worth a shot to putting on the stores and put a price on it. And because the guy, sorry, I can't remember his name right now, but it's very nice. He made a free version of it using Bubble. It's only available on the web, but it's also a showcase, and he built it also very quickly. But I'll tell you more about Bubble later on. And I think we actually have one last example that we won't go too much into the details, but this is very interesting as a content. It's a list of quotes or stories from startup founders of things that don't scale. I don't know if you know the famous article from Paul Graham, do things that don't scale. All the startups have very interesting stories. Maybe Awan can tell you stories of Airbnb at the beginning, but really go on this website and it's interesting. And it was built using Airtable and table to site that turned the table into a website.
So those examples illustrate how to use no-code tools to be successful and with lower costs, with lower risks, and being autonomous. but also it illustrates a methodology that is very important with no-code tools. It's called Lean Startup methodology. Many people know it. And we'll explain how it is really, really important to get it, because with no code, you can also do very complex products that people don't want to use. And there is only one thing I have to precise. At the beginning, I didn't precise it, but Banlieue Santé, the first example I gave, the app we developed to help Banlieue Santé, the co-founder, Abdelali El-Badawi, is in the founder program of Station F. So congrats, you know how to detect the pearls. So the MVP concept is very important. MVP, for people who don't know, it means minimum viable product. It means the first brick of your project that can be used and that can demonstrate that people want to use your project. Because maybe you will develop a very big, powerful application, but maybe nobody will use it. So you will have lost time, energy, and money. So the MVP is not what you see on the first line. You don't begin with building one wheel and then two wheels and then the body and then you have a car. No, you will begin by giving a product that is useful. For example, a skateboard. You can see this on the second line. I begin with a skateboard. I build it in 3 days. People can go faster with it. And I see that they fall very often. So I won't put a motor on the skateboard. No, I will put something so that people can be well balanced. And then it gives a trottinette. Excuse me, I don't know the word in English. But
Scooter.
The what?
Scooter.
A scooter. So that's the second iteration. And then I will build a bicycle. So each time it will be more powerful, but according to what people need, because I see how people use what I give to them from my MVP. No coding is very useful to build MVPs, and you can go very far with it. You can go further than MVPs, but you have to get this into account, to keep it in mind. And the MVP is a concept that is a key concept in the lean startup approach. Many people know it here, but I sum it up very quickly. The lean startup idea is build an MVP. You have ideas, okay. You build something, so you build a product, a first brick, and that's where no-code development makes your life easier. You build your product with no coding, for example, then you measure how people use it, you get data, you learn, you have conclusions about how they use it, then you have new ideas and build something according to how users used your skateboard. And generally, that's on the product step that there is a problem. If you need money to build something, you need time, you're not autonomous, you're dependent, you develop a dependency to web agency or any people, any tech site. But with no code, you can be autonomous on it. And there are two approaches to use no code. To sum it up, we like to say there is an all-in-one approach and the modular approach. The first one, the all-in-one approach, is to use only one tool to build your project. All the stack, all the bricks are in one tool. I use the same tool to do my entire project from A to Z. For example, Bubble. Bubble is a very powerful tool. We already said it. You can do very powerful web apps without going outside of Bubble. And there is the modular approach. You use a different tool for each layer of the stack, for each brick of the stack. I combine various tools that each does the best job for the required task. For example, I will use Type4 for the forms so that people can post information. Airtable to store the data and to get views, specific views on it. Webflow to make the website, and Stripe to enable users to pay. If we put Legos underneath, that's because that's like if you put Legos with one another's, with pipes between them sometimes, bricks and pipes. And we don't prefer one approach or another. They are different. They can be more funny or more easy to implement. Some people prefer the all-in-one approach, some people the modular. For our part, we recommend an approach or the other. It depends on the project and on the entrepreneur we have in front of us. And there is a very interesting case. We have a training at Contournement that is called side project. You come for several weeks, 3 hours a week, 6 hours a week on nights, because you can make your side project even if you have a job or a main activity. So you get trained at Contournement during 7 weeks to develop your MVP. And now we are putting it online. We did it in face-to-face training, and now we do it online. So Natika was one of the people we trained on side project training. And at the beginning, we said, you will use Bubble, because he wanted to make a personal app, a personal coach to take care of your afro hair, because she had afro hair, and that's very complicated to manage them. In France, there are no hairdressers trained on this, for example, on taking care of afro hair. So it sends you the right information at the right moment, according to your type of hair, your length of hair, and all. And we wanted to make a mobile app with notifications for it, with Bubble. And then we said, no, it will be faster, easier, and maybe even more user-friendly for people if we do it in a modular way. First, people fill a form with type form, very elegant, very smart forms, very powerful forms. Then the data, they are processed in Bubble so that people can get a personal diagnostic, a personal recommendations on their hair. Then, if they want to get a personalized email every week or 3 weeks at the right moment, they have to pay. And then we send those emails with SendGrid. And those emails, of course, are personalized with Bubble, with the data in Bubble. So we recommended a full-fledged all-in-one approach, and then moving forward in the project, we saw that it was better to do it like this. And Natalie went out, stepped out the training, finished the training with her MVP, and now is iterating with her users. And the modular way, so the Legos, different bricks, will imagine, to illustrate it, that I want to create a service that enables people to borrow music instruments to other users. For example, I know one of our people here is a musician. He wants to borrow music instruments to other users. First, I need a website where I can show my service and where users can access it. That's what we call the UI, the user interface. People need to access my website. So there are several website builders for it. Here, we classified them, we sorted them from the easiest to use to the less easy to use, but the most powerful. Weebly, for example, if anybody here tries Weebly, after 1 hour, he knows how to make a simple website. But that's what you see on the right. That's very, very user-friendly, and you can do amazing stuff with this, but you will be a bit limited. Strikingly, that's a bit the same. Squarespace, a bit more powerful, but yeah, you have to take several days to really master it. And then card.co, even powerful, but you will need maybe 1 week to master it. And Webflow, yeah, it's very, very powerful. That's a revolution. If you're a designer, you use Webflow, you do what you want on the interface. And that's recommended notably for designers or people who want to learn HTML or CSS. It works like HTML and CSS. That's very, very high quality code. But you'll have to train on 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I don't know, it depends, but it's harder to take in hand. Then people need to send and publish their instruments, right? Their instruments offers. I want to to loan my guitar. The second brick is made to enter data. So I already talked about it. Forms. There are specialized tools like Typeform. Typeform, as I said, is very powerful, elegant. That's really his job to create forms. So Typeform, we recommend it. Jotform, that's an alternative, and you can do things that you can't do with Typeform. For example, you can make pre-filled forms with personalized fields that are already filled for some users. You have to explore. Other options, of course, there are forms in Webflow, but they are rather limited. The form view in Airtable, as we did for Banlieue Santé, for example, so that people can propose their help, or Google Forms that can be used very quickly, very easily. And with Google Sheets, as you saw, you can, for example, make an application with Glide, as I did for Airtable, for Banlieue Santé, for example. And of course, I need somewhere to store those data so that I can use them in my service. When people fill the forms, I need to store my data somewhere. We already talked about Google Sheets. That's not made for it. That's a table tool, but sometimes you can use it. Airtable, that's the picture you can see underneath. That's really, really powerful, really user-friendly. You can make crazy things with it. For example, you can, when you saw Dualito, the Dualito example, that's a database like it. You just choose to view as a gallery with the image on the front side. You can make really, really powerful things. But you have to train some days. Yeah, we train people generally after 1 or 2 days, they can begin to do cool stuff with Airtable. Integromat, that's an alternative that is quite powerful, so that you can send your data where you want. You have to test it. Then it can be useful if users get a notification when someone wants to borrow their music instruments. Hey, Charlie, someone wants to borrow your drums. That's the fourth brick, automation and programming. That's what I call the pipes. Zapier, for example, that's a very powerful tool that enables you to connect apps with one another for very simple uses. For example, when in Gmail I get an email from Charlie, then put all the attachments into my Dropbox, for example. But you can also make automations powerful enough to empower web apps. For example, when someone is validating this form, send a notification to the person who owns the instrument. You can make some notifications like this. Integromat also, you can use it. Parabola, notably to transform data. And EFTTT is interesting also. It means if this, then that. And that's very clear that you can program without coding with it. And Phantom Buster, that's a French startup that enables you to do crazy stuff also, notably on scrapping. And last but not least, to close their deals, user may have to pay for what they borrow. And then that's not a leasing anymore. That's a leasing, not a loan. But if they have to pay, there is a fifth brick around external services. For example, you can use Stripe to pay with a simple button or through an API, a very powerful payment brick. OneSignal can be useful to implement some push notifications, the notifications you have in your phone on the top side. MailerLite, MailChimp, SendGrid for newsletters, but also for transactional emails. And Twilio is a powerful brick to use SMS in your app if you want to automatically notify users through SMS textos. So all those tools can be used in a no-code stack. And there is the all-in-one way. Alexi will describe quickly with some tools right now.
Yeah, we're going to do it quickly because there is a lot of questions, a lot of very interesting questions. So I will pass a little quicker on this side and then to take more time for the questions. Okay, so let's take a look at tools that can do everything in one place. So that's just a quick tweet. So in the no-code community now there is this notion of stack. There is the AWZ stack, as Vlad, the CEO of Webflow, is saying. A for the data, Airtable, Webflow for the UI, Zapier for the logic. But then Bubble was quickly to note that Bubble can also replace Webflow, Airtable, and Zapier at once. So we find it kind of funny. It's like all this ecosystem.
No code game.
And okay, so let's say you want to build a web app. So something that's going to be like Airbnb or something like that on the web. Webflow, Bubble, sorry, is the most famous tool. It's the biggest one. It's been around for almost 8 years now. So it's very stable. It's powerful because they have a lot of times to add a lot of features. They listen a lot to their community. And that's also one of the interesting things. The community is very big. It's very active. You just have to go on the forums and you'll see it. If you ever have a question, well, first, there's a pretty good chance that the answer will already be on the forum. But if it's not, then you can just ask it and you will get an answer very fast. So how does it work? I'm not going to go too deep because it would deserve a 2-hour webinar. But if you see, well, the quality isn't so great, but if you see, like, basically think about it as PowerPoint. So it's like PowerPoint for a website. You have a white canvas, and then you can just drag and drop. In the design part, you can just drag and drop elements, and you will draw your website just the way you want it. Then you have the workflows. The workflows, it's the logic. It's like Zapier, but inside Bubble. It's pretty much like, okay, so when someone pushes a button, you will do this action, you will add something to the database, you will send him an email, you will send him an SMS, all these kind of things. So this is all visual. So this is literally visual programming. You can make bugs, as Emmanuel, the co-founder of Bubble, likes to say. But there's also a debugger. So you will really become a developer when you use Bubble. There's the data layer. So it's really like Airtable. It's a lot simpler, but you can define your own structures, all this. Same for the styles. Basically, if I summarize, all the things that the developer do is abstracted in a visual way in Bubble. So that's fascinating. You really have to try it. There's this bit of a steep learning curve, but once you get it, you practically have the same power as a developer. And then one of the great thing about Bubble is also the ecosystem around it. We talked about the community already. Like things like Zero Code, for instance, a lot of random people, they write plugins, they write templates. Plugins, it's like in WordPress, it's like the really one of the powerful things come from the plugin. It will save you a lot of time. Let's say you want to do, like we have an example, for instance, we do a Tinder for sneakers. And so we use a plugin called the Tinder pile. And so in 2 minutes, basically, really, you can have this swipe left and right, and then you can kickstart your project very easily. Obviously, there's a lot of alternative. I won't go into the details. Check Boundless, check Infinable, which is a French company, and they're trying to do something. They're obviously not as powerful. They're younger, but they have some different take on this app building concept, so they can be worth it. And if you want to build more internal tools, meaning tools for your team, for your productivity, check out Coda and Retool. They're extremely popular in the no-code community.
And Alexi is saying that all being a very skilled coder. So I remind that we come from this
and very quickly, obviously, you all want to build mobile apps. That's the most one of the great use cases of no-code. It's a lot of young companies, but doing very interesting things. We have Adalo that we really like. Adalo, so Glide already, because it's the examples that Erwan showed. I talked about Bubble. Adalo is somewhere in between those two. It has a lot of possibilities, but it's not as many features as Bubble. But you can still have a database. You can drag and drop things. You can so it's very flexible, but you can't do all the specific things you want to do for the design. But that will save you time, and you will always have a nice looking app. There is also Thinkable. I talked about it already. We have actually in the chat someone Donald from Thinkable, so you can ask him questions if you'd like. It's a very powerful tool. One of the things is interesting with Thinkable is that it uses the block programming concept, which is the same that was invented by the MIT for Scratch, which is a tool for kids to learn how to code. It's very interesting. So it's a bit different than the way that Adalo or Bubble does it, but you should check it out also. And it has a lot of features going from the mobile phone possibilities. You can use the Bluetooth, you can use the GPS and these kind of things. And DraftBit, it's also worth to mention because it also has a different take. All those tools have different takes, on what they're doing. DraftBit, the specificity that you can export the code, and that's very interesting. It's going to export clean React Native code. So if you work with developers, maybe you can fast track your projects thanks to that. You will do, for instance, if you're the project owner, you can just do the screens, you can do some of the functionalities you can already do in DraftBit, and then you can just export the code, give them to developers that will do the specific part of it. So that can save you a lot of time and not have to write, pages of specifications. I'm glad you know AppSheet is a variation. It was bought by Google recently. That's why we're just mentioning it.
Yeah, the two first examples, H24 Urgence and Banlieue Santé, were built with a Glide.
And this part, we won't go into the details, but basically it's an overview of everything else that you can do with no-code. We will send you to everyone who's present. We registered we'll send you the presentation. So basically, there is tool for newsletters, tools from, if you can just swipe.
Augmented reality.
Yeah, VR, all this. Yeah, we don't have to show you, just it will be a surprise. You will see there's some startups from Station F in there. So have a look and you will find a lot of your use cases. Shall we take the questions now, or do you want to say some things about Contournement?
Very quickly, you have the KnowCoders.fr2 platform we created with all tools we like, every tools we like, so you can go on it if you want to discover. We have upcoming events, some webinars, conferences, online conferences, but also some podcasts, some online courses that are coming. So you have everything on our website. There is a side project bootcamp beginning on the 27th of April. So if you know people who want to kickstart their project, build their MVPs, that will be online. So just subscribe. You have it on our website. We have office hours also because we have many questions generally after those webinars. We have a 40-minute format or a 2 hours format to give some pieces of advice to you. And that's €50, I think, for the 40 minutes. You will see on the website. I don't get everything in mind. We have a manifest also to give our vision of no coding, and there is a Slack also to build the community. You have it on the website also. Just come. There are experts, there are beginners, there are many people. So that's the side project bootcamp. And we are looking for an intern on web marketing and community management. So that's not easy to find right now with the context. But if you know someone who would like to help on it, we are here. And now we can take your questions. Thank you for your patience.
So you can vote on the question in the system.
Yes.
So that will help prioritize, and we will take them in order of the votes. But we will answer everything. Don't worry, we have time.
So we answer to the first one, but take the time to vote them.
All right. So how can you facilitate the transition from no code to code? Are there recommended tools and systems? Very interesting questions, because as you saw with Comet, it's a good example of a company that had to do that. They started everything with no code and then transitioned to code. I don't know if there are tools that are specific for that, but there's an approach. I think the modular approach is easier to switch from no code to code, because you can start coding and replace bricks one by one. So that would be the way to do it. You could also do it with only one tool and slowly taking out features of what you built with Bubble, for instance. but I think that would be a little less easy, but that's also doable.
Mm.
The point of it is that your service never stops, because you always have what you built in no code that can run, and then slowly, piece by piece, you can transition.
On the Contournement podcast, Charles Thomas, the co-founder of Bubble, talks about it. So take this episode, and there is a part about how they prioritized and all.
It's in French, though, but...
And it's in French.
All right, next question. Regarding l'intendance, why not use an e-commerce platform like Shopify? Shopify is no code as well, no?
Yeah, Shopify is rather, we like to say, not old school no code, but when you use Shopify, if you want to do exactly what you want, you know that you will have to code rather quickly. You can't do exactly what you want, build your interface as you want in Shopify. So Webflow enables you to make really custom interfaces without coding. That's a very powerful Photoshop for no coding. So that's why they had a very important design stake. So it was important for them. So that's why they chose it. And moreover, that's easier for them to change things. You can't. You don't only change texts and all contents. No, you can really make some blocks and manipulate it how you want. So that's why they chose it.
I think it was quicker to get something very nice looking with it. But Shopify is definitely a no-code tool as well.
Yeah, Shopify is really, really great and powerful for all the e-commerce features, And Webflow on e-commerce is rather limited. That's why they had the stack with Zapier and coded a bit. But Shopify is definitely a good recommendation to make e-commerce MVP, really.
And if I can complete this answer, you can look at Loom, which is a brand that they are in the founders program also in Station F. It's a clothing brand, French clothing brand, and they use Shopify. And we also have a podcast episode about it. So
yeah, Shopify plus Parabola, Integromat, excuse me. And Gumroad is also a powerful tool, but no-code tool for e-commerce. But yeah, you have to be trained on it. It's
in the ecosystem, the one that is becoming more and more popular is called Elliot, if you want, but we haven't really tested it yet. Very interesting question. What is your assessment matrix to identify the best no-code tool for each specific project? I have some answers, and then you can complete if you want, Erwan.
Yes.
I think it's important to assess every tool. Also, things come from experience. But first, you should look at the ease of use in comparison to the functionalities that the tool offers. So this is like how you're going to use it. But then I think what's very important is also to assess the company behind it. How has it been well-founded? When was it started? Who's behind it? Because you need to make sure that what you're going to use is going to be there to stay, and not starting using a tool that is going to go bankrupt or stop their service a couple of months later. So that's important. And also, the last tip that I can give is the community. I think it's important to check if there's a big community, if there's good documentation, if there is good videos. Like if you check Glide or Webflow, for instance, they have amazing educational content. Like the Webflow University is really great. I think the best is Glide. Like the videos from Jake are very amazing, so you should check out that. And the pricing, of course, also comes to mind, but the pricing doesn't really give you an accurate information about how good the tool is, I think. So that's why you should be careful about the pricing and not really assess the tool on the pricing. But you should, of course, match the pricing with your needs and means.
And generally, a very good way of seeing what those tools are capable of is to search for the name and pricing. For example, Glide pricing. You will see the pricing page where all the features are detailed, and then, search a bit further and see what feedbacks you can find from users on the web, try it. Look at some videos, try it, and also the documentation is an important signal. For example, Glide, that's a really, really sleek documentation. That's easy to understand. That's really quite a high quality documentation. That can be a sign of quality also from those tools.
And look at what was built with those tools, like good examples.
Yeah. Concrete projects.
All right, next question. Which no-code solution integrates well with HubSpot or another CRM tool?
It looks like Google search.
I don't know if there's a specific answer to that. I think what's important is to use tools that integrate with Zapier or Integromat, the automation tools, because those will connect then to HubSpot. You don't need necessarily to have a tool. That's the great thing with no-code and the approach, is that you just need to connect to an automation tool like Integromat or Zapier, and then it will do the rest.
And there are some questions in the comments. Please, people, can you post them in the Ask a Question section so that people can vote them? But anyway, we will take the ones you just posted.
Yeah, well, let's answer to this one. Does this app for renting, exchanging my drum kit already exist?
I don't know. We don't know. We just took this example because we like to give examples of platforms where you can intermediate. And for example, our trainings, our one-day trainings, you will build that kind of app. When we train you for 1 day to discover no code through practice, we discover it through making, through using different tools, generally on the modular way, but also sometimes on the all-in-one way. But I don't know. You can look for it on the internet. I think it may exist. Yeah.
Is Thunkable and Glide similar? Glide does not include APIs like Thunkable. I think they are very different, and Domino from Thunkable had put an answer. Glide at this time does not allows you to connect directly to APIs. What you could do, however, is connect to APIs through Zapier, for instance. Always the same logic. That's
to put the data in your table, in your Google Sheet.
Yeah, exactly. The fact that Glide relies on the spreadsheets allows you to do this kind of thing. So really think not only about the tools, but the way you can interconnect them and feed them with data. It's not always like straightforward, but you can always find a way.
Yeah, sometimes you say, oh, there is no Adalo and I don't know, HubSpot integration. Oh, I would choose another tool. No, the modular way of doing it is really to say, how can I bypass this lack of integration so that they can connect? And generally, Zapier, Integromat make it for you. And that's why we are here to give pieces of advice to people.
Can I get a recording of this session? Yes, you can, because it's the exact same link, actually. Once this is finished and we've answered all the questions, there will be a replay available at the same URL. Will you share the slides at the end of the workshop? Yes, we will send them to you directly after lunch. Is Glide only for mobile apps? Yes. You can, however, go to the website because the app has a URL. You can go with it on your browser, on your desktop, but then you will see the app just the way Erwan showed you.
Yeah, if you connect with your computer, it will look like it. You can see the app, but it will be in that container. And I bet another thing. If you use Zapier, for example, you can have one database, put the data into Google Sheet and make the Glide, but also use this database to make a website that is which displays dynamically the data. So you can combine, even if Glide can't enable you to make websites for the moment, you find something.
You can use Sheet to Site that does the same thing with for websites.
Yeah.
Next question. Can you use a Google Sheet as backend database with any no-code tool or only with Webflow? So I should precise that Webflow doesn't use Google Sheet as a backend. It actually allows you to import the data into the internal database of Webflow. Webflow has a CMS system, and you can inject data there through direct CSV files like spreadsheets, or using Zapier, for instance. So it's not directly backend. And then, so there are tools like Glide that actually use Google Sheets as a backend. There are some other ones, Sheet2Site that we just mentioned. And then, as I've said, if the tool you want to use doesn't use Google Sheets as a backend, try to find a way to use it, maybe through the API, maybe through Zapier, and you'll find a way. So that's a really big question, and we won't be able to answer it really. When your app is ready to launch, what are the rules, conditions to make it available on stores, Apple, etc.? I think it's very hard to answer because all the different stores have different rules. Apple has a lot of rules. There's a lot of things to comply to. So I highly recommend you look at their documentation because it's extremely restrictive. And that's also one of the reasons we believe that the web is a good way of distributing apps, and that Glide, for instance, you just have a URL, you can put whatever you want in Glide. It's going to be accessible, and you don't have to go through the stores. And second thing, you don't have to pay the 30%. If you sell something, you don't have to pay to give 30% to Apple if you don't go through the stores.
When we say PWA, Progressive Web Apps, it means here I paste the URL, and I don't have to download it on Google or Play Store or App Store. That's one of the advantages. But there are some tools, for example, Adalo. When you want to publish on a store, that's really sleek, really easy. Lucien Tavano, who is a very good Bubble Nocoder, but also some other tools, gave us his feedback. He said that was a pleasure to post on the App Store. Normally, that's a torture. You suffer. And so Adalo for this seems very, very good.
Yeah, but it doesn't still check for the rules and all this for you. So you have to do this for yourself. You are right about Shopify. You are limited very fast, but can you combine Shopify with no-code tools? Of course. This is a very good way to do it. That's what you should do. Again, check the example of Loom that are Station F and in our podcast episode, because they use Shopify plus Integromat, and they do everything with Integromat. They do literally everything. They do all the logistics, all the sending the data to the warehouse with Integromat. They do everything with the for the customer service using Integromat. So it's very powerful. So yes, you can combine. And there's a follow-up. Would you say that Shopify is most limited in terms of design? I don't think it is, but the thing is, with Shopify, you have to code the templates using HTML and CSS. So that's why that part we think it's more limiting, because we have a take that we never use HTML, CSS. We want to do everything in a visual programming way, which is what Webflow allows you. But you're not really limited. You can do whatever you want with Shopify, I believe. Also, we're not experts on Shopify, so
yeah.
Is
it possible to use the funds from Formation Professionnelle for your side project training, which seems a very, very interesting, but a little expensive? For the moment, we are Datadog. So if you're a company, you can use your Formation Professionnelle funds to finance it. But for the CPF, we are now studying it. It may be fast, but maybe not. But if you want to talk about it with us, we can be more precise about it. And about the pricing, we have to explain that that's 1,399 euros for 5 weeks, 2 times 3 hours each week. We try to compare the pricing with the price you have to pay to get an MVP, because generally you have minimum 5,000 or 10,000 euros, and you can't control your tool afterwards. Our goal in side project, on the side project training, is to allow you to build your MVP, but also to enable you to make it change, to continue to build it, So let's talk about it. If you want, send us an email, and we'll get clearer about where we are for the Formation Professionnelle funds, if you want.
Do you recommend using all-in-one, what Alex presented, or the modular approach one presented?
Take what Erwan says, generally. That's the rule. I'm joking. As I said, we don't have a preference for one or the other. Yes, we prefer the modular way because we can explore more tools, and that's more funny, and you have more flexibility. And that's our role at Contournement, to see every tool evolving, because many of those tools get new features every week, every month. So that's our expertise. But sometimes all-in-one approach can be so more powerful. It depends on what you want to do. It depends on how motivated you are to become a no-coder. Everybody can become a no-code maker. But some people, for example, in the side project, the first side project training, there was Nathanael, who was a designer. He has built a betting app, and he preferred Bubble because he liked Bubble. He wanted power. And then he developed 2 other apps after the side project training, for his own, but also for a friend. And now he's becoming a freelancer on Bubble. But there were some other students, they prefer to combine different tools. It really depends. You have to test for it. And generally, if you test, try to be really concentrating during half a day or an entire day, or to get trained by us or someone else, because it will be more fluent, more fluid. Because you can also get very frustrated when it doesn't work at the beginning, like with code.
Could you give us an average MVP cost using these tools, please? I believe it depends, but just have a sense of scale. Well, I think it can go from anywhere from 0 to a couple of hundreds euros, I would say. You can check, let's say you have a stack of 5 tools. The average price of tools are around 20 euros, I think. That's per month. So what I'm saying is per month. So if you have 5 tools, then you will pay 100 euros. But that's only if you use all those tools are freemium usually. So if you pay, if the free version is not enough. So yeah, so I guess it's somewhere like that.
And your question is about if you do it on yourself or if you pay a freelancer for it, a no-code freelancer. Because
I think if you do it,
yeah, because you have to know, at Contournement, we don't produce apps. Yes, we do it because we do it for our own or for some specific clients or to help organizations. But there are very, very good experts in France, and we try to build the community around them on Bubble, on Webflow, on Zapier, Airtable. So you can also find some freelancers. But on your own, yeah, if you build it on your own, you can, that's what Alexis said. And on the scale, it depends, because some tools, you can have thousands of users and don't pay much. But for example, with Bubble, for performance, you have to pay, it can be quite expensive, but always less expensive than if you had paid the web agency. Examples of use cases of internal tools using no-code tools. Yeah, we work with a big company called Prisma Media, with the director of innovation. And with Airtable and Zapier, they have clearly resolved many problems. Now we are training them to use those tools well and to be really autonomous, to create their own tools. But Airtable for production of videos, for HR, for management, that's very powerful tool. For Banlieue Santé, we used Airtable also on the back office. But data come from the app built with glides, Some people want to help Banlieue Santé, they fill forms. Those data come in their internal tool in Airtable, and then they can manage it, dispatch missions automatically, instead of copying, pasting many data at the different places. So for the moment, that's mainly Airtable we saw as use cases for internal uses.
I think the question also refers to Coda and Retool that I mentioned. You should look at the templates. I think in all those tools, Airtable is also a great example. Look at the templates And in Airtable, there's even a section called Universe, where you have templates from everybody. So you have maybe Expedia, for instance, that shares their template. So you should really have a look at all this, because it will give you a sense of what can be done with those tools. And that's
a very good question, because for startups, excuse me, Alexi, yeah, go on.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying all those no-code tools, they have a lot of templates that's going to show you what you can do with them. So that can be a good example.
And we are now preparing training for startups, mainly for middle and big startups, small, middle, and big startups, but who run their business, about full stack employee, training people to use those internal tools like Coda, Zapier, Airtable, so that they can put all their workflows on Power,
And well, this last question, I think we kind of answer. Please elaborate on pricing no code, especially if you plan to build for clients. I think it's what we said earlier about the stack and the cost. All those tools have freemium versions. And yeah, if you plan to do it for clients, have your clients pay for the cost anyways. So it should be fine.
What we should say here, and that will be our conclusion, generally, if you have in mind a website, an app, a preconceived way of seeing your app, if you want to no-code it exactly as you thought, I think that's not the good approach, because you can spend many times trying to hack things and to make something not really solid, really stable. No, if you take the way of the MVP, building an MVP, testing things, adapting it according to what no code enables you to do, you can radically lower the prices and the time. So it depends on if you are like a traditional web agency, or if you are really building things after giving advices. So the pricing really depends on it. When we do it, generally we say to clients, no, you want to do this with no code, we say to you, you can't do this. Then go see a React Native web agency, for example. It may cost 10 times more, but you will have what you want. What we can tell you is that if you take no code and test this, you have scenario 1, scenario 2, scenario 3 with those prices. That's the methodology.
All right. Well, I think it's time to let you go have lunch. We had a great time answering all your questions. We hope you had a great time too. Thank you, Cindy, for the comments, and everyone to be here. I think it was really cool.
And I remind you, share en mode confiné. They need help. They are founders in Station F. They are helping people in the underprivileged neighborhoods. Really good use case of no code for good. So share them. And come visit us on contournement.io. On the homepage, you have everything. We are now transforming our webpage, our front page, homepage, but you have links to all the things: online conferences, one-day trainings, side project training. So you will have everything on the homepage.
And we will send you also in the email with the presentation, we will also send you a link to the Slack. So you're all invited to join us at the Slack, and we can keep the conversation going over there. Yes. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. See you.